Say hi to YouTube now. How does the moon cut his hair? Eclipse it. Very good. Very, 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 very good. Here's the first thing we're going to do. We're going to watch this video. Who's this by? This is by someone called Kanga. So thank you for making this video, Kanga. And it's basically just, you know, oh, what's the next thing that's coming out? Is it new map? New age? Let's see.
Already teasing a new map? I asked 5,000 people and over 80% seem to think so. Firstly, the timing is right. The start of episode 6 will be roughly 6 months since per release, and the initial plan for Valorant was to release maps roughly every 6 months. This new player card is at the end of the next battle pass and it's called Astral Conduit. Harbor and Astral have been talking about a location called the City of Flowers. Take a listen.
At Realm, I studied the City of Flowers. Even tracked it down with a map we pulled out of the Gulf of Combat. When I got there, well, it wasn't pretty.
Ruined.
Was. Decimated. Sabotaged. I couldn't even get close.
Destroyed on Alpha. What about Omega? Maybe it's still there.
But I think it pretty much is confirmed. It's going to be a map. And so the next thing we're going to get is going to be a new map. But then, that brings up the point. Oh, a new map is coming. Well, as we know, Valorant wants to stick to 7 maps being in the pool. You know, that it's a nice sweet spot for variety and mastery. Completely agree. It also is good for competitive games as well, you know, in terms of map picks and bans. And you know what that means? That means, of course, that one map is going to rotate out. Like Split did before, something's gotta go. And that's what this video is about. We're figuring out what's gonna go. And it's interesting here as well that they did give, you know, just like a little hint of like some of the things that they included in their decision-making process. And some of these things were player sentiment, so, you know, do people like the map, basically. Time since the release, past and future planned updates. Now, obviously, we don't know what future planned updates they have, but, you know, we can talk about this as well. What the map brings in terms of strategic variants, as well as where Pearl fits into all of it. So, again, obviously, whatever the new map is, we won't really know, you know, what that map is like until it comes out, of course, so that one we won't really be able to understand. But for some of the others, we can look at those factors and, you know, start to guess, well, okay, it's not going to be this one, it might be this one, and try and narrow it down to the map that is going to get rotated out. This also was announced by Valorant News Brazil. Don't know if this is an actual thing or not, but it looks pretty official. The developers discussed the possibility of Split's return in Episode 6, Act 1. According to them, the map pool is fine with 7 maps, and as a new map will arrive in the new episode, 2 maps will come out of rotation to fit Split. So it might just be that we don't just need 1 map to rotate, because if Split comes back in, then we need 2 maps to come back in. Now, I do not know if this is confirmed or not. I feel like the new map is pretty much guaranteed that the next thing is going to be a new map. This, I don't know if this is true or not, but it is a possibility, and I do think that it is a possibility because, as people I think have been saying, people like Split. Now, there's this little photo here as well. I can't read Portuguese. I'm just going to put it on the screen. If you can read Portuguese and know what this says, let me know. Okay, this apparently is the translation of whatever it says, so we'll see. I have seen an increasing number of people asking about the Split map. In view of this, let's question the following. Do you prefer that we create new maps and agents, or that developers are stuck with old maps, having to stop their creations to fix old maps? Many delays are due to having to stop to fix old maps, and now there are 8 maps, so imagine when there are 15 maps and 3 give problems. It is unfeasible for so few developers to always be watching 15 maps, for example. Well, this method was proposed. In addition to the reasons mentioned in the Split removal article from rotation, there's also the reason for it to be the smallest map. So when they launch a new map, this smaller map requirement will no longer count because 2 maps will be removed. Oh yes, Split can come back one day. For that, it will need to go through bug fixes. It was the map with the highest bug rate. The reason the map is not in unrated mode is due to the fact there is no bug fix support for this map. That's actually an interesting point I never thought of. If it enabled, users would report bugs and say that Riot doesn't care about unrated, etc. That does actually make sense. With that in mind, what I have come up with here is a little score chart for each of the maps that are currently in the game based off player sentiment, time factor, which is how long it has been in the game. Does the map need reworking in any kind of way? And we'll talk about that because some of you, I think, will have different answers to me on some of those questions. Does it provide unique strategy, which they talked about in that article as well? And then we'll give them a score, a total, and we'll rank each of the maps, right, from like first to last, and we'll come out with a score of, okay, this one is perhaps, fits the criteria, for most likely to be rotated out, knowing what we know. Okay, so let's start off with player sentiment. And I don't really have like a clear vision on this in terms of like how people would rank all of the maps. This is going to be a bit of my guesstimation, and maybe chat can chime in as well. So to me, the Valorant maps right now, they kind of fit in 3 categories. Maps that I think have general positive vibes, maps that have somewhat neutral vibes, and maps that you see a lot of hate for, or quite a bit of hate for. And I would say maps that have positive vibes right now, I would say are probably Ascent and Haven. Now, in what order we could have an interesting debate? I'd personally say Haven over Ascent. Okay, most people, it seems to be picking Haven. So, and I agree. So let's put Haven as our number 1. Oh no, I guess I want you to be a 7 then, and you be 6. So we'll score it on, like, if you come first, you get high number. If you come last, you get the lower number. Then to me, there's kind of this middle ground of maps where some people like them, some people don't. And in this box, I would definitely put Pearl in kind of the neutral map. I think, particularly after the Fracture changes, I actually think most people have been pretty positive about the Fracture changes, and I don't see as much hate for Fracture as I think I once did. And so I'd put that in the neutral category. And then Icebox is the third one, where I think that's more of a Marmite map. Some people really like Icebox. Some people really don't like Icebox. I'm going to put Pearl here as 5. I'm going to put Fracture there as 4 and Icebox as 3. And then we've got Bind and Breeze. And I do see again, a bit of a gap to Bind and Breeze, where people really don't like Bind and Breeze, it seems. Breeze. People think Breeze last, Bind second last. The next thing is time factor. So when did the map come out? So obviously Pearl was, the last map to come out. Then it was Fracture. Then it was Breeze. Then it was Icebox. Then it was Ascent, and Bind and Haven came out at the start. But this one, to me, practically does rule out. There's just no way they're going to rotate out Pearl. There's just no way. Does a map need reworking? If we take a look at Pearl, I don't think they have enough data on Pearl yet. So I'm going to put that as the 7, and I'm going to put Fracture as the 6 because it just got reworked. And so I don't think that those maps would be in line for major reworks anytime soon. Maybe in the future, we'll see, but not anytime soon. So this is the first thing we could take a look at just here, which is the attacking and defensive win rates on maps at the pro level, but also what we kind of think in terms of like ranked and how it applies to that as well. Don't have the official numbers for ranked, but Ascent is the most polarized map, at least in pro play at the moment, with a full 5% difference either way towards the defensive side. And I'm sure most of you in your ranked games as well probably feel like defending on Ascent is pretty, not that difficult. Does it need a rework, Ascent? I would say there is possibilities there for Ascent to need, maybe not like a full massive rework, but parts of it to be changed, right? Just parts of it to make it a bit easier for the attackers. Could Ascent use with the break in time to potentially get that? Yes, I don't think I would mind that. We won't give it a number just yet because we'll need to take a look at the others, but I think that it's on the kind of, does it desperately need a rework? No. Could it use with 1? Would it benefit from 1? Yeah, probably. So Bind in terms of the win rates, for attackers and defenders, this is going to shock you in pro play, but it's actually attack sided Bind, or at least it was in champs, because I can almost guarantee that in your ranked games, that Bind is probably not attack sided. Does Bind need a rework? Kinda. Yeah, I think it wouldn't. Again, I'd put it in somewhat the same category of Ascent, where it's like, Does it desperately need one? I'm not actually sure it does. But it wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing either, to kind of just shake things up a bit. I think the teleporters could be used better. I think the gimmick of the map didn't play out perhaps how they really maybe thought it would. Okay, Breeze. Breeze was slightly defender-sided. Again, I think that's probably going to shock you all a bit, but I don't think it's, you know, as extreme as Ascent, which has had kind of more of a consistent, as we saw on Copenhagen, like it was more 50-50. The problem is, no one really uses these super interesting strategies, or at least it's much more limited in their use, right? And the main way that, whether it be pro teams or definitely in your ranked games, the main way people attack this A site is just to, well, let me get up this Viper wall here, let me put it across there, and there's basically only like a couple places that they can go. You can clear that with like, you know, one drone or whatever, and then this corner here. Oh, look, we got the site, we'll plant the spike, let's go. And that is what people do. And so I talked about that in the video where I thought this map would be improved by making this choke point harder to attack from. By making it harder to get out of this, that just means that attackers will be more inclined to do some of the more interesting stuff on the map, play for more of the map, and kind of go from there. And that is what I think should still happen. I still think that this needs to be more difficult overall to attack through that choke point. I would say more so than Ascent and Bind. Could use with a bit of love and getting that rework. Okay, next up, Haven. Yeah, it was 52-48. Brexit flashbacks. Honestly, I feel like it's probably okay. We can put Haven as our number 5, and I'm pretty happy overall. Let's go to Icebox, and yes, Icebox, pretty attack-sided, you know, venturing into the Ascent numbers, but this time on the attack side, at least in top-level pro play. And those of you who are big fans of the channel will know, I hate Icebox. I really, really hate Icebox. I hate the way it plays. I hate that everyone just does the same thing. I hate that there's no variation whatsoever on the map. Just like boring, no util. Everyone uses the same util, all the points. It's been completely solved as a map. Everyone, you know, puts their Viper wall across this. Everyone, you know, puts a Viper orb either here or here on the attack side. It's a wall there, it's a wall there. You know, oh, chamber trap up here in kitchen. Never seen that one before. Where did you learn that one? Oh, Silver Dart here to clear out the early aggression on A. Oh, haven't seen that before. Oh, you want a KO knife here on A here? Okay, a little KO knife in there. Whoa, that's new. Never seen that. Oh, Sage Wall across here, plant the spike. Wow. Sage Wall across here, plant the spike. Whoa. Boring, 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 boring. God, I hate Icebox. Does Icebox need a rework? Yes. And so I'm going to put Icebox as my 1. I think Icebox is the most desperate. I'd then probably put Breeze as my 2. Close between Bind and Ascent. I'll put Bind, then Ascent, I think. And now we come to unique strategy. I'll probably talk about it from like a sort of meta standpoint. Like, what is the meta on this map? Is it different to other maps? So Ascent, I think we could probably call let's call it a mid-heavy map, right? Generally, in most pro games, or probably even your ranked games, a lot of the action takes place in mid, right? Like, you know, you want to like threaten this area, you want to threaten that you could come this way as well, because of the way like Ascent is built, you know, with this kind of 3 that becomes 4 lanes. You know, you want to take control of the lane that gives you access to 2 of the ways of going, which is mid. So, you know, you will want to, you know, take this space and, you know, have this space available to you. It allows you to quickly pivot between the 2 sites as well. Maybe beat the rotations of the defenders. We can call Ascent, I think, a pretty mid-heavy map. When we take a look at Bind, Bind is kind of a weird one. So Ascent as a map, I would call like a 3-4 map. You start with 3 lanes as the attackers, and then that diverges into 4. Bind is kind of a 4-4 map. Unlike maybe Ascent, you know, obviously Bind doesn't have a mid. So Bind is kind of somewhat unique. We'll get into that. And the fact that it's kind of a 50-50 map, right? It's not a mid-heavy map. It's kind of a either-or map, I guess you could call it. 5. So I'd call Breeze like a 3-5 map. Like, again, if we talk meta-wise, is kind of just like a straight exec map. You know, 4 stacks, go site, maybe someone lurks, right? Like you just come down here as a big stack, 4 of you go here, 1 of you lurks in mid, maybe somewhere over here. You know, that is how this map plays out. Even at the highest levels, that's a pretty common thing to see happen. Same on the other side as well. 4 of us go here, you know, someone lurks down here. Take a look there. Pretty common stuff overall, you know, to have kind of a more like what I'll call an exec heavy map. So far, Ascent, Bind, and Breeze, I would say strategically are pretty different and pretty separate from one another. Bind is a very heavy default map. Ascent is a bit more mixed with a mid kind of strong point. Breeze is kind of more of an extremities go kind of map. Also in part due to its size as well. Moving on to Fracture. Yeah, let's call Fracture a 4-6 map. Where obviously you can start on the 4 sides, and then you've got 2 ways to come here. You got 2 ways to go there, and then obviously 1 here, 1 there. And that is actually part of the reason why this map does play out in I think a very unique way, right? If there's 6 ways for the attackers to go, you've only got 5 defenders. So that's kind of one of the reasons why, you know, you need to be more willing to be aggressive on that defensive side to make it so that, you know, this 6, well, if we can own this space up to here, if we can own, you know, this space up to here, well, this 2 now becomes 1, right? Just here. So if we can be aggressive and control this and make this a 1 instead, or like this one here, we can turn this 6 into a 5 because now they've lost access to one of those things, right? So being, I think, a bit more aggressive does make sense for Fracture, and yeah, it is a very, I would say, a very unique map. I think Fracture might be the most unique, and I think that's why everyone hated it, by the way, at the start, is because no one really knew how to play on this map because it was so different and unique that everyone kind of, and it took a while even for pro teams to kind of figure out you needed to be pretty aggressive on the map. So Haven we would describe as a 1. I'm going to call mid kind of a full 2, and I'll call this a 3. But then it's going to be another 3-5 map, kind of similar to Breeze. Haven is a lot more balanced, I would say. You don't necessarily, it's not as like a mid-focused. I'd actually say, at least in pro games, you know, the focus right now is definitely on this A lobby area. But I'd say Haven overall is more of a balanced map. Different teams definitely have different approaches. Some teams, you know, like to go towards this kind of, you know, Optic are a good example with their kind of double Sentinel Phoenix comp, where they didn't pay nearly as much attention to A as they did for this, so that they could get kind of tricky lurks either through B, or, you know, they'd fake to go C and then come back to B, or then, you know, fake through Garage and then come back to, like, you know, they could move around a lot between these 3 lanes. Icebox, it's meant to be a 3-4 map where you could, in theory, maybe do an A split, but you're never going to. So in theory, it's a 3-4 map. In reality, it's more of a 2-2 map. And the meta on Icebox is very much just group up and go to a site, plant the spike, and play post plant. Probably most similar to like Fracture and Breeze, like you could say, is, I wouldn't even call it exec though. It's not, you don't even execute onto an Icebox site. You just kind of slowly work your way onto it. Pearl I wouldn't worry too much about anyway. We pretty much know Pearl isn't going to get rotated, but Pearl you would say is what? Is a 3-4 map. I think it is a bit more of, I think it shares more similarities to like those other exec maps. You know, you will see quite a few like 5 stacks, let's go B. You know, that will be a part of pretty much every team's playbook. You do see, you know, quite a few teams also go for A, but I think there's a lot more opportunities for, you know, mid lurks and stuff. You might even say it's somewhat Icebox-esque, Pearl, in the way it plays out. Nowhere near to the same extreme as Icebox. Icebox is like off the rails extreme in the way it's played out, but there's similarities there, right? Where you will get a lot of groups and go with lurkers coming through the middle area. So score-wise, what I'll say is Fracture, I think, has the most unique strategy to it. Weirdly, Haven, I think, is actually kind of, even though it's kind of, you might say, a balanced map, there isn't a ton of balanced maps. Maybe the next map needs to be a balanced map. Let's take a look at that, right? Honestly, Bind might be next. Those are its very default heavy strategies. Then let's go Ascent. And then you've got Breeze, Icebox, and Pearl. And, well, just because I don't like Icebox, let's put Icebox 1. Let's put Pearl at 3. And let's put Breeze at 2. And that gives us our totals. So let's add them up. So I would have it that Fracture, Haven, and Pearl are really unlikely to be rotated. Ascent, unlikely, but not impossible. And Bind, Breeze, and Icebox are our prime contenders. So here's my overall determination. If only one map gets rotated out, which definitely will happen when the next map comes, I would go for Icebox, but I wouldn't be shocked if they pick Breeze. If then Split comes back as well, I think Bind would go and Split would come back in. That's going to be the end of the video. So you all have to say bye, YouTube. So that's the end conclusion. Get rid of Breeze or Icebox for the new map. And then if you bring Split back, get rid of Bind. And then we'll be good. Bye, YouTube. Bye.